if I were an element on the periodic table, I would be in the reactive section. My natural inclination is to pop off, to react immediately. And I've had to learn to respond rather than react. Now, for humans, the answer is therapy. But for systems, the answer is practice. I love that this conference is focused on incidents and DevOps and just that kind of approach to things. But I like the term incident response rather than incident management. Incident management feels like a situation that you come across, you handle, and then you never come back to. Our emergency management services tackle fires and hurricanes, tornadoes, all kinds of natural disasters that threaten our homes and impact our lives. We take a lot of inspiration from those organizations and their practices because they work. They're well practiced. We know for decades how this actually functions. The execution is proven, but that's not the entire story, is it? A software incident is not a fire or a hurricane. It might feel like that. It certainly gives you the same kind of adrenaline response. And when talking about this topic, I like the word response over management because for me, it better reflects the repetitive nature of incidents. We're going to have incidents. We're going to have a lot of them forever. This is something that's just going to happen. For me, it's not about trying to eliminate incidents. It's about making them smaller, more expected tasks, even standard parts of your workday, as wild as that might seem. And this requires a unique approach to architecture, development, and operations. I'm Emily Freeman. I'm the author of DevOps for Dummies and the co-curator of 97 Things Every Cloud Engineer Should Know. My co-author, right there, Nathan Harvey. That book would not have happened without Nathan, so good job. I am passionate about all things DevOps and developer communities. I run community engagement at AWS. I want to take a moment to really step back from the topic at hand and discuss how we communicate as an industry. And really, if I'm honest, to blame Twitter for just about everything, because why not throw them under the Tesla? Twitter has been useful in a lot of different ways. We have access to each other in a way we just didn't before. We can communicate, we're connected. That's a good thing. But I think somewhere between the character limit and the algorithms and probably, honestly, our attention spans, we've lost a tolerance for nuance. And this isn't just a Twitter problem. I just like to pick on Twitter. It's much more of a global issue. But I think there's also another layer to this, something bigger, almost invisible. In social media, there's something called context collapse. The term was originally coined by Dana Boyd, and the concept is a little bit older. You know that I love a social scientist. Context collapse is a flattening of multiple audiences into a single context. So what does that mean? You and your close friends have a ton of shared context that you formed throughout your friendships, probably over years. You and your work colleagues deal with the shared context of your workplace, unique institutional knowledge, customs. Even your neighbors also have context. Words are powerful. It's why I love them, and I really am passionate about it. And we're seeing the power of words play out in real time as Volodymyr Zelensky inspires the world to get behind Ukraine. But words are not enough. I am continuously frustrated by the limitations of my own verbose spoken language. We lack words that convey deep meaning in specific contexts. They just don't exist yet, at least not in every language. I think it's these gaps that contribute to a lot of the societal conflict and misunderstandings that we see. But words are our only real medium with which to convey complex thoughts and feelings to other humans. So we're somewhat limited. As we move away from those in-groups that we share context with, friends, colleagues, neighbors, we begin to enter groups with which we have no reputation, no trust, and no mutual understanding. Which means that thing that was like super funny and lighthearted in your group text is now being wildly misinterpreted by other people that you've never met. The gift of the retweet. It's fantastic. Your words reach people that have none of the context that enveloped your original remark. Now, my point in saying this isn't really about Twitter. It's that I think there's a phenomenon here that's maybe originated with social media, but hasn't bled into our other communities. It's impacting how we communicate with each other in every medium. I define community as places that people gather to share experiences, learn, and socialize. We have a ton of communities in tech. This is a community. You have various kind of radiuses of communities as you get out, radii. I'm jet lagged. There's a lot of overlap. You're probably part of multiple communities in tech. There has been this flattening of advice across all of these communities, dare I say thought leadership, that's been reduced to little quips and funny retorts. I think we're better than that. I think we are some of the smartest people on the planet, and we are capable of gathering together, thinking critically about a concept, even if we don't immediately agree. We're capable of sitting with that and working through nuance, ruminating on the good, the bad, the weird, the undefined. I think we're capable of having much more complex discussions than we are currently having. There is an over-indexing right now on how to implement the ideas of others, rather than taking inspiration from those ideas and tailoring that to our own unique circumstances. You see this a lot with DevOps. Somewhere along the line, we lost our focus on building bridges and reducing silos, and instead began to put more and more load onto individuals. One of the unintended consequences of DevOps is this idea that everyone has to do everything. That a JavaScript developer has to understand the intricacies of an application's CI/CD pipeline or the details of cloud infrastructure. And on the other side of that, there's been this over-indexing on developers right now that's left people in operations feeling somewhat ignored, unsure of their role. DevOps is not a methodology that encourages everyone to do everything. That is ridiculous. We all have specialties. And we should lean into our personal and professional strengths, buttressing our weaknesses with our colleagues. Before we had DevOps, I think we had something a little like this. There was just no overlap. Developers wrote code with zero concern about security or testing, operations, nothing. It was glorious. You just typed and it was someone else's problem. This obviously caused a lot of problems, a lot of frustrations. As you know, it's sort of why DevOps exists. The first name for DevOps was, Matt? Agile System Administration. I love that. A little mouthy. But really, it's how do you bring Agile principles to operations or infrastructure? And I believe the intention of DevOps was actually something like this. Overlap, communication, shared understanding, and processes. This is an awareness of the complexities that other people in different specialties exist with. It means you can work through collaboration, have teamwork, and I think be happy. But somehow we ended up here. And y'all, if I contributed to this, I'm sorry, because this is not the way. It's like we overlaid the SDLC with developers and just said, ship it, let's do it. This is a lack of nuance in messaging and a compression of ideas and thoughts and methodologies. The problem is deeply integrated with incident response. It's important that people have ownership and accountability over the services they build. I am not arguing against that. But creating an organization following the implementation of DevOps that says developers are responsible for the entire lifecycle of their code, I'm very rarely seen it be successful. Not only because it eliminates or demoralizes specialty groups outside of development, but because you're asking developers at that point to be experts in their stack of languages and tooling, an expert in security and testing, deploying and releasing code, operations, infrastructure, identifying and fixing problems on the fly. And honestly, why is anyone complaining? Maybe you all are superhuman. If so, congratulations, I am not. I feel stressed thinking about trying to become an expert in one area, let alone half a dozen. I'm guessing that I'm not alone in that. I'm guessing some of you feel ill-equipped to both ship software that is resilient and respond to incidents. I think developers and engineers of all kinds do their best work when they feel empowered and fulfilled and happy. Don't we all want to have joy in our lives and our work? Yes, thank you. Woohoo for happiness. I think to achieve this, we have to take a step forward and think about what's next. How do organizations not only apply DevOps in a way that increases velocity, but design their teams and socio-technical systems for resiliency? This requires us to look at the full software delivery process, because incident response isn't just about getting better at responding to incidents. It's about reducing the quantity, severity, and scope of incidents. I believe the first step in this is accepting that in modern software development, there is no beginning and end. We are in a constant state of motion. Part of this shift is eschewing this idea, this old way of thinking about our work. Last year, I pitched a radical new idea, a replacement for the SDLC. If you're already familiar with this idea, you can take a few minutes, brainstorm other ideas, think of questions, go to Slido, but give me a few minutes while I bring everyone up to speed. There are longer, more in-depth talks on the topic, but I'll sort of quickly summarize so we're all on the same page. You're already familiar with the software, or originally systems development lifecycle, what we call the SDLC. I was shocked to find out that the SDLC has been in use since the 1960s. The SDLC is a boomer, which is probably why it's causing problems. Over all these years, it has remained more or less the same. Now, there are always sort of slight adjustments, variations. There's different steps. We kind of make it different shapes, add different colors. Certainly with the DevOps toolchain, we moved it into an infinity loop. But beyond being linear and unreflective of our daily work, I think the biggest issue with the SDLC is that it has become an assumption. We don't even think about it anymore. Now, I get some pushback when I say this, but I'll show you. When DevSecOps became the first derivative of DevOps, it sought to move security left, meaning that when we think about security, it should be earlier on in the process. This phrase, meant to bring awareness and consideration, was dependent on the SDLC as a construct. I think this limits us, because the models we use and the way we discuss our work impacts our work. I think we need a model capable of capturing the multi-threaded, non-sequential nature of our work, as well as embody the roles engineers take on and the considerations they encounter along the way. What I settled on is what I call the revolution model. I believe this visualization is capable of capturing the pivotal moments of any software scenario. I call it revolution because, well, if it's not static, it's revolving. Its circular shape reflects the continuous and iterative nature of our work. And I promise, securability was prettier on the original one. But we're going to go with it. Also, because it is revolutionary, I'm challenging a 60-year-old model that is embedded into our daily language. It's constructed of 5 concentric circles describing the critical roles of software development: architecting, developing, automating, deploying, and operating. Intersecting each loop are 6 considerations that mean the production sort of issues that every engineer faces as they work through their engineering tasks: testability, securability, reliability, observability, flexibility, and scalability. The circles that create the base of the model are a shift in thinking about our roles as engineers. We've long used personas as the default way to group people, but personas have always bothered me because they either oversimplify someone's career or they needlessly complicate it. I think few people fit cleanly and completely into persona-based buckets, like developers or operations anymore. The lines have gotten really fuzzy. But perhaps most critically, I believe personas are immutable. A persona is wholly dependent on how someone identifies themselves. It's intrinsic, not extrinsic. Our titles and jobs change relatively frequently for some of us, but we still probably think of ourselves as a specific persona. I was a developer. I will always think in that way. I approach problems from that perspective. My background influences not only how I see myself, but also how I approach my work. Roles are very different. Roles are temporary, inconsistent, and constantly fluctuating. Your work isn't confined to a single set of skills. It may have been a decade ago, but not anymore. And beyond all of this is perhaps a more important concept, that we aren't just devs or ops or QA anymore. We play all of these roles at various times. No matter what role we're playing, we have to consider a number of issues. The first is testability. All software systems require testing to assure architects that designs work, developers that code works, operators that infrastructure is working as expected, and engineers of all disciplines that code changes won't bring down the system. Testing in its many forms is what enables systems to be durable and have longevity. Security is everyone's responsibility, but I would argue that few understand how to design and execute secure systems. I struggle with this. Security has its own jargon and ways of thinking that aren't typically taught outside of that discipline. I think security is something we know we should dedicate time to, but don't often make time for. And let's be honest, the stakes are really high with that. It's scary and complicated. It is absolutely critical that applications and services work as expected most of the time. That said, availability is often mistakenly treated as a synonym for reliability. Instead, it's just a single aspect of the concept. If a system is available, but data is inaccurate or out of sync, the system is not reliable. Reliability, I think, is that end result, but it's resiliency that is the journey for developers and engineers of all kinds. Observability is really the ability to have insight into an application or system. It's telemetry and monitoring and alerting. Now, there's an aspect of observability that overlaps with reliability. It's why they're neighbors. But the purpose of observability isn't just to maintain a reliable system. The concept originates in linear dynamic systems and is defined as how well the internal states of a system can be evaluated and understood based on information about its external outputs. Observability is about understanding more than anything else. Flexible systems absorb code smoothly, embody a clean separation of concerns, and are partitioned into small components or classes. Flexible systems are architected to enable the now as well as the next. And if we're honest, in our work, the only thing constant is change. In every role we play, creating flexible solutions that will grow as the applications grow is absolutely critical. Finally, scalability refers to more than a system's ability to scale for additional load, which is what we typically think of. It's growth, a system's ability to grow over time. Scalability in the Revolution model carries the continuous innovation of a team and the byproducts of that growth within that system. And for me, it's the most human of all the considerations. It requires each of us in our various roles to consider everyone around us. Our customers who rely on the services we provide, our colleagues, current and future, with whom we collaborate, and even ourselves. We have to read that code later. One of the reasons I'm so passionate about this model is that it democratizes accountability. Accountability can have a massive impact on incident response. Now, I prefer the word accountable over responsible. Accountability is a willingness to account for one's actions, which is really powerful. Whereas responsibility is having control over a situation or a formal duty to do something, to deal with an issue. The best example I have of this is parenting. For every parent in this room, we have to think about the decisions we make on a daily basis. Now, I am responsible to my child for keeping her alive, for providing food and shelter and water and basic necessities. But the higher order role I serve in her life is to love her, to model the principles that I value, and to train her to be a self-sufficient, independent human being. That's where I am accountable to her. I make decisions daily, and I never know if I'm choosing correctly. None of us really do. But I do know the information I use to make every decision and how I came to the conclusion I did. And even in the cases where I'll have chosen incorrectly, I'll be able to account for those decisions because I'll have confidence that I made the best choice given the data I had at the time. That is all we can ever do as parents and as engineers. The model many of us are currently working in puts all of the responsibility into a single role. I want to back out of that really quickly and embrace accountability. I believe Revolution can help us redirect from this developer-centric interpretation of DevOps to an implementation that enables flexibility, respect, and shared accountability. The model calls out specific specialties and areas of domain expertise, and this is really important because these areas will always be critical to our success. Not in a way that means a single role carries the weight of the entire system or even part of that system. It rejects the notion that experts as developers, or who do not identify as developers, are somehow less important. It creates a culture where everyone stands on the same equal footing. Everyone has visibility into the work of others, and everyone is committed to the success of their peers. This creates a culture where teams can respond to incidents rather than react to downtime. So let's look at how this works in practice real quick. Take something like testability. As a developer, at a minimum, I am responsible for unit tests to show that the behavior of the features I implement and the bugs I fix actually work. I would argue that developers should be doing additional tests, but that's a different talk. Anyone working to automate processes and remove manual toil from everyday work should be automating tests. These tests run every time code is committed to the main branch. Any continuous integration or deployment pipeline should have integration tests or end-to-end tests implemented. Now, these are just a few of the intersections we can have. There are countless examples for this. And you can actually measure your success. The metric of test coverage is absolutely flawed and very cheatable, but it is a way of noting the testability of a system, a service, or a class. Engineer opinions are data as well. I think we over-index as an industry on quantitative data because somehow it feels more factual, but qualitative data from experts can be just as valuable, sometimes more so. This is just one example, but you can utilize this model as a way of measuring a baseline and reevaluating progress at set intervals. You know what data is available to you and where you have gaps. Utilize data where you have it, filling gaps with qualitative data. Don't shy away from that. Even an assumption is a better anchor than nothing when you're attempting to establish a baseline for growth. Each of these areas impact incident response. This model normalizes work in a way that the SDLC never did, because our work is never finished. I struggle with housework. I'm a bit of a slob. Don't tell my mom. Just kidding, she knows. She raised me. One of the reasons my home is always a bit messy, or a lot messy, is that I'm not diligent about cleaning, regular tidying. It turns out people with immaculate homes, they tidy constantly. They put things away every time. They do the dishes every night. It's wild. They clean constantly. But I have things to learn from them because it's that regular attention and diligence that creates a clean space. I think our work is very similar to this. There's no finishing something and then moving on. Everything we build must be maintained. Every piece of code has to be updated and deprecated. And it's that regular attention that holds the key to better incident response. Incident response isn't about avoiding incidents, but making them part of your regular work. There are generally 5 levels of incident severity. If you want more details than I can give in the next few minutes, I highly recommend the incident response content published by PagerDuty. They did a fantastic job. Sev 1 is the most grave type of incidents. It is customers who are severely impacted, functionality is not working, and a large percentage of those customers are running into issues with the product. They simply can't use it. These incidents carry the risk of violating service level agreements, or SLAs, and typically require public statements to address the issue. Sev 2 is a severe product or service degradation that impacts a large number of customers. Sev 3 can escalate to Sev 2 pretty quickly if it's not responded to immediately. But these incidents typically impact a smaller group of customers, involve a single service maybe. Sev 4 incidents do not affect a customer's ability to use the product. Maybe the service is slow or it has performance issues. And Sev 5 incidents are really bugs. Customers notice something odd, they notify you, that's not ideal, but they can use the product, and the features function generally as expected. There is a distinct bifurcation between the first two severity categories and the latter three. Sev 1 and Sev 2 incidents are major incidents that require an immediate and large-scale response. The others, much more simple to address. Now, we're never going to eliminate incidents. We've already established this. There will always be issues and bugs and performance problems and even outages. But we need to start treating incidents like normal work, and that requires fewer Sev 1 and Sev 2 incidents. In these major incidents, you have no choice but to react. Stress is high, it distracts from ongoing, proactive work. It creates technical debt, and it tires engineers. The more these severe incidents occur, the more people feel like their job is a series of Sisyphean tasks. We want boring JIRA tickets that get moved up to the top of the priority list. That sounds awesome. It is less about your incident response and more about planned small improvements measured over time. The shared accountability model of Revolution acknowledges that there is no beginning or end to software development, not anymore. Incident response isn't a perfect line with a beginning and an end. It is continuous, diligent work. I believe this model, while not perfect, gets us closer to the next phase of DevOps. It captures the ever-changing complexity of modern socio-technical systems, and it emphasizes workflows and processes that make the right thing to do the easy thing to do. Throughout the day at this conference, we're going to hear from incredible speakers and technical leaders. I'm especially excited about the next talk. Resist the urge to compress their advice into sound bites. I want you to sit with the ideas we discuss. Share your thoughts, debate, ask questions, think about how an approach would work for you and your team, or wouldn't work. What would you change? This is why I love open spaces in the afternoons. Incident response starts with shared accountability, and that goes beyond standard work. Accountability starts here, today, with this conference. Your voice is powerful, your ideas are novel. Listen, learn, but don't forget to share. Thank you so much.